Well, I didn't think I was going to put up any more videos related to Planet of the Apes or the newest movie, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But here I am. Somebody wrote me after I put up the absurdly long Planet of the Apes slideshow, which still has some duplicates. I worked on that thing for a very long time when you got a zillion pictures in front of you trying to delete the ones that were duplicates, so there would just be one picture of each, one occurrence of each picture. There's still duplicates, and I'm really pissed, but whatever. Suppose if it's unbelievably long, 5 more pictures isn't going to make that big of a deal. Anyway, so Paul Hoff, I never know how to say his name. Paul, it's Pauldhoff, writes, I can see that this movie has hit you square in the heart. Now, if you go back and you watch the review that I gave of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes right after watching the movie in the theater, it's not the best. I don't have a lot of good things to say. I think it's the kind of movie that has, I don't know how to say this. Having it at home and really looking at it has greatly changed my opinion of it. Now, I just have to say ahead of time that I realize now that not everybody has seen this movie, so I will try not to say too much, but I probably will say too much. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want any spoilers, you might not want to watch this video, because I'm going to get into some of the stuff. This is more me analyzing the movie. This is not saying that I'm right, not saying that I'm wrong, because I'm no expert at all, and everybody's going to look at it with different perspective, different eyes. But this is my analysis of Dawn. I also wanted to explain, one I try to write. I have written 2 books, and I have had to. The first book is garbage, so that doesn't even count. The second one, if I can ever get the motivation to put it back into the computer. I lost the digital versions of it. All I have 7 chapters of it on my laptop here, and the rest is all paper. I think I've said this before. But yeah, that book actually might be publishable if I just got off my ass and did something with it. But it's hard to be motivated. What I really need is a reader, somebody who's willing to read it and actually, oh, I like that. I want to see more. But that's hard to find. Anyway, so the point is, I've had to write, and I write fantasy adventure, so I've had to write perspective of evil villains and good characters. And I try, when I wrote my particularly, I have a couple evil villains, but the main evil villain is, I'm hoping, multifaceted and is not a 2-dimensional character, which is, the typical you love to see him die evil villain. That's usually a very 2-dimensional character. So anyway, I wrote Paul, I'll just call him Paul, back. Yes, it has, meaning it has hit me square in the heart. I didn't love the original 8 films for their campiness, and certainly not for their plots, meaning the sequels. The movies were more character-driven because special effects may as well not have existed back then. I came to care about the Caesar character very much. In parentheses, it helped that he was played by Roddy McDowall, who was one of my favorite actors back then. I think Roddy McDowall has a lot to do with Apes' popularity and why the series carried on as long as it did. When I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I didn't really get a good feeling of who Caesar is because he was just growing up, and so I couldn't really see anything but a different character altogether from the Caesar I grew up with. With Dawn, Caesar is the leader he is supposed to be and interacts with his own kind and humans just as the Caesar I grew up with. Even with the special effects and interesting plot, I was looking deeper. In the theater, I wasn't so impressed with Dawn. I even made a movie review and said so, because it seemed, isn't the leader great? Stuff had replaced doing the work of having Caesar show himself to be great. But having it at home and really watching it, I see a lot of old Caesar in this new one. He is a character I find myself wishing existed for real, like he's someone I would really want to know, which is just what the original Caesar did. So yes, very much this one has touched my heart, which is why I really hope, little yappy dogs, which is why I really hope they stay on course if and when they do future films. Excuse me, I'm going to close the door. It's raining out, so Haley's on the porch, so her barks are extremely loud. Kind that can shatter glass. Okay, so then, let's see what else. I wrote, Brandon Collins wrote that he loved the part in Rise of the Planet of the Apes when the black guy gets kicked into the water while he's lying injured in the helicopter. And my take on that is, he was your typical villain character. Two-dimensional. In film, it's hard to create a villain with any depth, because once you do, he becomes harder to kill. A good example, in fact, I think this is a really good example of this, of a villain with depth, is Darth Vader. He seems to be very two-dimensional in the first Star Wars movie, but over the following two sequels, I don't really think of the second trilogy as, I try to ignore it. In the following sequels, there almost seems to be an expression conveyed by and despite his mask. He becomes something more. I just wanted to add, it's like there's a depth to him that wasn't there in the first movie. Like something seething inside, some kind of deep inner energy in Darth Vader that isn't so much in the first movie. In contrast, the Emperor is very two-dimensional and stays that way through all 6 of the Star Wars films. He is nothing but pure evil that you happily want to kill. And that's what, you see villains in superhero type movies. That's usually the kind of villain you're talking about. It's rare that you find one that you really understand, that there's more than just, it's just a villain character. Koba in Dawn is a villain with depth. He's got a lot of depth, and at the same time, and I think this is an example of really good writing. He's a character with depth, but by the time, this is a spoiler, so turn it off if you're still watching and you don't want a spoiler. By the time the scene comes where Koba dies, you want him to die because he has caused so much bad. But Koba is a creature that you could understand. There's depth to him. He's not just a mindless evil character waking up in the morning, yes, I think I'm going to do some evil today. What evil deed shall I do to ruin the lives of other people? That's a two-dimensional evil character, in my opinion, a two-dimensional villain. Koba is a friend of Caesar's, and I believe very much admires Caesar. Caesar gave him a taste of revenge at the end of Rise when he let him kill his tormentor. That would be the head scientist guy, the black guy. Caesar lets Koba kill him because deep down Caesar's a bit of a pacifist. And that's good. That's what he's supposed to be. At least that's how he was set up to be in the original movies. So Koba gets a taste of revenge, and maybe he's grateful. Maybe he is grateful to Caesar for that, and maybe he feels that he's had enough. He's had his revenge. The start of this movie and at the start of Dawn, the idea the apes have is that the humans have wiped themselves out. They're just not there anymore, and Koba has put the thoughts of revenge behind him. And he and Caesar are very close. and even appears that Koba is advises Caesar, and Caesar heeds his instructions, takes into account Koba's instructions, even acts on Koba's instructions. But through the course of the film, Caesar's tight rein on Koba becomes too much for Koba. And the rage inside, the anger, just seeing his tormentor again and reliving in his mind all the bad that happened to him. Koba just wants to wipe all of them out. And he becomes a two-dimensional evil character. But at the same time, because of what has been established before, that he was an experiment, he was an experimented on animal in the lab. He was tormented and scarred and abused. He was a lab rat. And you understand the rage. You understand the helpless anger that he must have been holding inside him for so long. The revenge that is just the desire for retribution. You understand him. You understand where he's coming from. And he's out of control. That's the problem with Koba. He's not so much evil as out of control. His passions take him over, and he ends up becoming a huge problem that must be ended. It's not so much killing off the evil guy, although he is, he's a great villain, but he's also, is he evil? That's a deeper villain. When you question, is he really evil, or is there more to it? He's not just evil. What he does is evil. What he does is wicked. Heartless, cruel, whatever. But there's more to it. There's something driving him besides just, I think I'm just going to cause chaos and havoc today. There's a lot more driving Koba. So that to me is a more multi-dimensional villain and a really good villain. And I'm really sorry that Koba never is healed from his wounds. He's a wounded animal in many different ways, on different levels. He's a wounded animal reacting like a wounded animal. And he can't be healed. He can't come out of that. He can't recover. So I think it's ironic that the creature that the humans tormented to that point is the cause of so much bad for the humans. At the same time, it turns out to be the cause of bad for the apes. Because now, because of Koba's actions, the apes are looking at having war is imminent because of Koba's actions. So that's my little analysis on Koba. I was really angry at first when I saw that they made Koba bad. Because he was so tormented. I wanted to see him have a happy rest of his life. Become a respected elder in his society. But that wasn't to happen. That wasn't meant to be. And it makes more sense. In the original series, the gorillas are the heavy. They're the bullies. They're the bad, mindless, evil, characters. And that's not really true to the nature of gorillas, which I'm really glad whoever thought to re-examine how the gorillas would be portrayed. I'm really glad that they did that. Because gorillas, they're the most powerful primate, I believe. They're big, strong animals. But their nature is not the way they're portrayed in the original Ape series. So I'm really glad that the gorillas are portrayed the way they are, and I'm glad that the bad guy wasn't a gorilla. In my opinion, the original series was a bit racist. You had your chimpanzees, you had your elite, which were the orangutans. They were the super intellectual, intelligent, scientific ones. The religious leaders were orangutans. And the stupid ones, the ones that were just really uneducated, uninterested in bettering themselves, just interested in beating things up, were the gorillas. And I just thought that the whole thing was racist, and I'm glad that that has not carried on into the new movies. I'm trying to think what else I wanted to say. When I was younger, didn't get to have a lot of friends. So I made friends in my mind with fictional characters. Probably one reason why I was so easily swayed by the lure of Christianity. Why I ended up a Christian with an imaginary friend, you know. But honestly, Jesus doesn't compare to some of the fictional imaginary friends that I've had. One of my favorites, actually a couple of my very favorite imaginary friends, comes from Stephen R. Donaldson's books, Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. If anybody's read them, they're kind of, he's taken elements from Lord of the Rings. Oops, wrong movie. Wait a minute, yeah it is. I'm sorry, I got the right movie. Sorry. I'm thinking Apes, I'm not thinking Lord of the Rings. He took a lot of the aspects of Lord of the Rings and made his own series. And I think it's hard for any writer to write a completely original work. I think it's pretty common for writers to be inspired by other writers and creations of other writers. With my book, I have giants in my book because I'm inspired by Donaldson's work. So I mean, it's a matter of, I consider copying another writer or taking on another writer's idea is a high form of praise. Donaldson's books are very different than Tolkien's. And he's got a character, Lord Mahoram, not sure if I'm saying that right, who I absolutely, it's like, oh my gosh, I wish this guy was real. He is so amazingly cool. I want to know him. And of course, there's Saltheart Foam Follower, who's the giant. Again, a character I really would love to know. If you have an imagination of any kind, sometimes fictional characters you read in a book can become special to you. They can become close to your heart even though you know they're fiction. But they have qualities that you admire and that you wish, so to the point you wish they were real, because you think that the world would be a better place if these people actually were real. Caesar was that too, for me. So always I knew that, okay, that's just an actor in an ape suit, referring to Roddy McDowall. Actually, the Apes movies made me a Roddy McDowall fan because he put so much passion into his performances, even despite the latex mask. There was so much emotion conveyed by Roddy McDowall that it made me curious and I wanted to see his other films because, in my opinion, he was a great actor. But yeah, I always knew that Caesar was a fictional character. I'm not stupid. Just like I knew Lord Mahoram and Saltheart Foam Follower are fictional characters. But nevertheless, they had qualities about them that I respected and wished I had and wanted to emulate, And the same is true for the new Caesar. I know that he's a fictional character. It's kind of, actually, I think it's a really cool thing that when the original Planet of the Apes came out and they had these amazing masks, people were amazed at these masks and the high level of whatever that went into these masks and how ape-like these humans were able to be made because of putting these masks and these costumes on. Planet of the Apes costuming and the makeup, I believe, won awards because it was so innovative at that time. And now it's like you fast forward, 40, 45 years later, I don't even know how many years. And again, innovation has lent a hand into creating something that's so realistic. It's like they have to keep telling us, those aren't real. We use no actual chimpanzees or apes in this movie. Those are all people. It's like they have to tell the audience that because it isn't that obvious. That's how realistic the apes look in the last two movies. And I think that's pretty amazing. It carries the legacy forward from the original ape movies of the innovation, striving to create something that looks as much like an ape as possible. In the newer movies, you see so much more ape-like behavior. They don't walk upright. They don't wear clothes. They're primitive apes that they're all accidents of science. You know, I said that Koba isn't a natural ape in my last video because he's been so abused and tormented. He's like a little innocent pit bull puppy. Now everyone says, well, pit bulls, well, not everybody, but people who don't know any better, say that or think that pit bulls are all very bad, nasty tempered dogs. It depends on how they're raised. You know, Koba's like a pit bull puppy that was kicked and beaten and burned and tortured. You know, what kind of a result are you going to get when that little puppy grows up? That's Koba. He's a creation. He's a creation of his environment, or a product of his environment. Technically, all the apes are not natural. They're all unnatural apes because of the tampering of science and this medication, this drug that they've been given. But what I love is how they all move and they act so much more like apes. Planet of the Apes, the originals, you don't really see apes. You see humans in costumes trying to sort of walk like apes, like, you know. But in these movies, you see more of what it would really be if apes were intelligent. They move like apes. They utilize more than just walking around. They don't walk around. They do everything. They climb, they jump, they swing. They do all the things that apes do. In the original movies, in fact, it was kind of ironic in the original movies, the civilized apes were less able to jump and climb as the humans because they were civilized. It's like they lost their ability. They were more like humans trying to get around. You know, the scene where Taylor escapes and he's trying to get away from his pursuers. The apes are falling all over themselves trying to catch him because they've lost their physical coordination. And so it's kind of like they because it's not just overnight they didn't get a drug and they magically become intelligent. The apes in the future have been gradually becoming more intelligent over time. They evolved into intelligent beings. So I really appreciated how this was more of a glimpse of what it would really look like if apes, as we know apes, were to become intelligent. They would still be apes, but they would be intelligent apes. So it was more of a primeval vision of ape society, the way the new movies are. My dog wants to get in, so hang on a second. It's cold and wet out, and she's pissed off that I haven't let her in. So I'm almost done. I just have all these thoughts and these comments this morning kind of got my wheel spinning a little bit more about, I think there's a lot of depth to the movie if you really think about it. And that's what I do. And maybe it's just because it's a holdover from when I was a kid and I was trying to make imaginary friends out of fictional characters, you know, in my head. Or maybe it's just because I write or I have written, and I think I maybe more than some people, I might scrutinize a little bit more the motivations and how the characters kind of interact. I don't know. But I found that this movie has a lot of meat on its bones. It's hard. The first time watching it, you know, it's like, you know, whatever. Good versus bad, you know, it's kind of sucks for them kind of thing. But if you really look at especially if you pay attention to the body language and the facial expressions of Caesar, which is amazing. It's like that you can even see the facial expressions, that you can even see the glint in the eyes change as his emotions come and go on his face. There's so much there that you might not see the first time you watch it. You know, I saw so much more the second and third time. I've watched it several times now. Like the regret when Maurice the orangutan tells Caesar that, I think they're all gone, and Caesar's like looking out into the horizon, and it just seems to me that there's a little bit of regret there, like I said in my last video, like maybe he's clinging to hope that his father's alive. And like when Caesar gets, another spoiler, when Caesar gets shot and he's wounded, what is the first thing Caesar wants? He wants to go home. He wants them to take him home, as in where he lived with his father, the human father. And my thought is he hoping against hope that his father, who cared for him and nurtured him, is going to be there, that his father's going to run out the door and help them take him into the house and make everything okay again, like he did when Caesar was growing up. Is that what was, I mean, what caused Caesar to want to go back to that house? You know, to me, there's a lot of, that speaks volumes for the love that and trust that Caesar has for his father. You know, it's like a child who thinks that they're grown up and they go out into the world and bad stuff happens and it's over their head, and what do? They go home. They go home where they know it's safe and where somebody cares. Caesar went home to his human father, of course, then found out, of course, that everything has changed, everything is gone. But to me, that's another huge indicator of the depth of feeling that Caesar has for his father, which is why I would really like to see a reunion. I would really love to see them bring the dad back in the future films. The look on Caesar's face when he's standing at the Union 76 sign, and he's not standing, he's on horseback. And Malcolm and his wife are standing there, and they have just activated the power. And one of the guys puts a CD on, and music starts to play, and Malcolm and his wife just get caught up in the music. And Caesar's sitting there on the horse looking at them and watching them get caught up in the music. And it's almost like, I think at that moment, that's when he realizes, it's like he sees, and again, this is me reading into the character, what I see on his face, especially as he's riding on his horse. He comes up to Malcolm and his wife. He comes up to Malcolm and just looks at Malcolm like he's seen him for the very first time. And then he holds out his hand and gives Malcolm his trust. It's like, in that moment, to me, that's one of the best scenes in the movie. That's like a pivotal moment where Caesar decides that Malcolm is a good guy, that Malcolm is good. He sees past the fear and whatever else Malcolm has shown up to this point. Malcolm lets down his guard and gets caught up in the music, and Caesar sees his heart. He sees a good human. He sees a good person. And to me, that kind of changes, I think, Caesar at that moment. Caesar's way of looking at those two people, at Malcolm and his wife. And that kind of goes on through the rest of the movie. Those are the good guys. Those are the ones he can trust. And that's even before they help him when he gets shot. So it's a good movie. There's a lot of character dynamic going on. There's a lot of stuff. And again, I could just be reading into it stuff, but I don't know. Or maybe that's what they deliberately were trying to convey in those scenes. I don't know. But it's I think a quality movie. I think, considering how campy the sequels were after the original Planet of the Apes, Battle for Planet of the Apes wasn't very campy. I just didn't really like it. And I think part of the reason I didn't like it was Roddy McDowall is not in the second Planet of the Apes movie. He does not play Cornelius. Some other guy does. It's like, okay. But that one, I can't really call it campy. I just didn't really ever like Beneath the Planet of the Apes, but the ones that followed that one progressively get more and more campy. And the music in Escape from Planet of the Apes is just like, it's like so 70s. It's just really bad. But, yeah. They're all character driven. Those movies did not rely on special effects. They relied on characters and interactions and stuff that's underneath the surface. And I think what makes Dawn of the Planet of the Apes a good movie, and a little bit Rise has the same, but more Dawn, is what's going on underneath the surface. If you look at the characters, if you look at the expressions, I think there's a lot going on, and that's what makes it a really interesting movie that has held my attention. And it's kind of like, I feel like, you did it right, guys. You did it right. You brought Caesar back in a completely different form, but he's there. And that's a really good thing for somebody who had him as an imaginary friend. And I'm not seriously saying like I walked around talking to him. When I say imaginary friend, I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this movie again and revisit this really cool character, a really cool character that I wished lived. or like rereading a book because you really liked Lord Mahorum, and you want to visit Lord Mahorum again, so I'm going to read this book again and revisit him. That's about all it is. When you say imaginary friend, it's not quite the same as Jesus, where you walk around and have a conversation. It's just in your imagination. You like to imagine that they're real people, that they really exist somewhere, because you think the world would be a better place if they did. So anyway, I really appreciated these movies. I hope, again, as I said before, that they put a lot of thought into how they go, where they go from here, and that they do not. They also said something about how they'd like eventually for these movies to connect with the old timeline, which I'm very against, because the old timeline would completely be contradictory to what Caesar would like. He's a pacifist. He doesn't want to destroy all humans. He doesn't want to make humans. He doesn't want to see humans be made into savages. That wouldn't be what he would want. So I really hope they don't follow that course. But also, if they did, the original future is like the year 3200 or something. It's like way out there. You'd have to go, it would be thousands of years into the future. I can't imagine they could make enough movies to connect with the original timeline, but I hope they don't. I hope they just do the little thing. I thought that these were just remakes of the last two movies, Conquest and Battle. That's what I thought these were, with Caesar and the apes basically taking over the planet, and then in battle they learn to live in harmony with humans. That's what I thought this was. The idea of somehow taking that and connecting it back to the original, I think that's a really bad idea, and I really hope they don't do that, because that would not be good. Even Caesar would die off. It wouldn't even be his sons. It wouldn't be his grandsons. It wouldn't even be. It would be a distant descendant far into the future, who would not remember Caesar at all or anything that Caesar stood for. And I really hope they don't do that. So okay, this is a long video. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the movie in a little bit deeper analysis, my take on what I think they were doing, at least how I see it, what I read into it. So if you've been watching, thank you. I had one more thought. You know how people rip apart movies and pick out all the 10 most obvious mistakes, or whatever. I don't know about that, but I do know one that cracks me up every time. And I just have to say something. Toward the end of the film, Ape Village gets torched, and you see the flames roaring skyward into the night. Right? It's a very impressive blaze in the middle of a forest. What happens there? I mean, it's like, shouldn't there have been like a huge forest fire as a result of this huge fire that's triggered in the middle of a forest? It's like, we just assume that the little night creatures, after the apes evacuate from their home, put the fire out somehow. Maybe they turn around and dug with their little feet and buried the flames with dirt. Anyway, it just cracks me up that they never really. It's just like, there's a huge fire in the middle of the forest, and that's it. Nothing else. I mean, I was just thinking the fire should have burned right down into the human city and burned everything up. But whatever. It's just a movie, right? It's just, okay, that's it. Okay, now this time for sure. Thank you for watching. Bye.